Hello, I'm Amisila Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. So the title of this video is Vedic Social Organization. Okay, so obviously social organization is dependent on the culture of the society, right? So the society then gets organized based on the worldview of the society. Okay, so the Vedic system is what was in place in ancient India. Okay, but similar type of systems existed across the world. It's like when people talk about Tartaria, and how they had like all these free energy using like plasma to generate electricity, all sorts of systems, electronics that were not based on the alternate and direct current system that we're using today. So Tartarian technology existed across the world, okay? And you see it in the way things were built across the world, right? There is, for example, a building, a Gothic building in South America, where it's built in a chasm between two basically cliff faces, and it's made of shale. And there's no way that Europeans who came to South America with like pretty much just food and the basics of conquest could have built that. That is like prime technology. Okay, so this type of civilization was all over the world, similarly to how like the philosophy of Ubuntu is a philosophy that is found amongst the Bantu people, but it is expressed in very similar ways from Ireland to Japan to Egypt with the law of Ma'at, right? So the Vedic system, similar systems existed around the world. Okay, so the hallmark of the Vedic social organization was that society divided the functions of its people into 4 different categories. Okay, now obviously human beings are multifaceted beings, so no one is going to be just one thing. It's like when you're dealing with your horoscope, it's very rare you'll find someone who's like Capricorn sun, Capricorn moon, Capricorn rising, 5th house, 9th house, this, that, they're all Capricorn. Like, it's probably never gonna happen, it would never happen. Okay, so but it could, okay, whatever. But point is, it's like utterly rare, right? So with the Vedic social system, you would find that people would have an overarching tendency in their personality to fit into one of these 4 social brackets, but then they would have the proclivities of the other different types, okay? So what would happen is that the teachers of the society, the elders, the priests, the philosophers, the spiritual teachers, the spiritual leaders, the shamans, the medicine people, they would notice the inclinations of the kids, and obviously the parents as well, would notice. And then some of them would also do astrological horoscopes for their kids based on when they are due to be born. And then that would also maybe tell what tendency and proclivities the child would have in terms of their place in the social system of the society. Okay, so the 4 layers of the society were the Brahmana class, which was the class of teachers, priests, healers, spiritual leaders, wise counselors, gurus, the spiritual people, right? And then next would be the Kshatriya class, and these would be like the kings, the administrators, the army generals, the police, the people who administer the society through the legal system, and who also keep order through the judicial system, in terms of like the police and the army, and who go to war and defend the society, right? In terms of the legal system, I would think that the judges would probably be Brahmanas, but I'm not sure. No, actually, they wouldn't be Brahmanas. They would be Kshatriyas. Okay, it gets a little bit complicated. I'm not going to lie. But anyway, then after the Kshatriya class, you'd have the Vaishya class, who were like the merchant class, the money-making people in the society. And then next you'd have the Sudra class, which would be the people who are like the artisans, the plumbers, the electricians, the people who work with their hands, the people who are like servants, like laborers who work under the direction of like the manager, like who would work under the boss, the owner of the company, who would be a Vaishya, right? But there would also be the people who are like the servants. There would be the people who are working under the direction of, let's say, basically people who work as the hands of the society, like to make things happen, right? To like do things. You need the plumbing fixed, you get a Sudra to come and do that type of stuff, because that's what they were inclined to do, working with their hands, right? Sort of like manual labor type of things, farm workers, so that's how the society was differentiated. And like I say, people might have tendencies towards the other things. So you could be a Kshatriya, like an administrator, bureaucrat, but you've got maybe the deep love of carpentry, right? So you're a Kshatriya, but you have the Sudra tendency. Or you could be a Sudra who is working as a boiler maker or something, but you're a very philosophical person. So you've got Brahminical tendencies, okay? So when you're small, your parents, your teachers, who are the Brahmanas, the social worker type people in the society, the people who heal people spiritually and emotionally and mentally, who would also be Brahmanas, they would look at the kids and say, oh, this one has got that tendency, this one's got that tendency, right? And then the kids would be funneled into those particular types of professions, right? And there's a movie called Divergent, I think. Anyway, that movie, if you know about it, it's like a futuristic movie, and then the people also get funneled into different aspects. You have like the warrior class, you've got the scientists and philosophers and doctors, and then you've got the people who think about how to run the society, and then you've got the people who do like the labor, the manual labor, right? So back then, okay, so this is like an ancient system, obviously, and like I say, it was all over the world, just like how we talk about the Tartarian system. Back then, these social classes or groupings, there was no hierarchy amongst them. You know what I'm saying? Not like how we have today. Like today, if you go to India and someone is called a Sudra, people think they are like a lower brand of humanity, right? But it's just, that's not how the system actually functioned. But like many things today in this world, the spiritual qualities of the humanity in general on earth has diminished to the point where people are more inclined to be fixated on externalities and on titles and on labels, as opposed to the actual human being occupying that title or that label. And so what you find is that whereas before, Sudras would have been highly valued people, because you're not functioning if your plumbing isn't working, okay? You might be the biggest brain, the greatest Brahminical scientist there is, or healer or doctor, but if your drain is blocked, your clients can't come for healing because it's gonna stink. You know what I mean? Like, and also like today, for example, everyone is so obsessed with the Kshatriya class, right? But what was very important back then is that if you were a Kshatriya, you had to live according to Dharma, and Dharma is a culture that is based on spiritual truth, okay? And if you didn't, then you would cause chaos, for your society. Like how King Solomon said, my people perish for a lack of knowledge, right? So you had to be a dharmic Kshatriya, and you would have learned your Dharma from the Brahmanas, okay? And a wise Kshatriya would always heed the wise counsel of an authentic Brahmana, because that Brahmana is someone who knows deep spiritual truth and has dedicated themselves to the truth. So I'm going to carry on in part 2.